And welcome back to Meeting of the Minds. Today we have the honor of having David Carolla with us, the Executive Director of the World Apostolate of Fatima, USA. David, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Excellent. We appreciate having you. So we'll jump right into it. One of the number one things that I speak of, one of the big pieces that gets thrown back at me when I speak about Our Lady of Fatima, a lot of people say, well, you know, it's just private revelation. This is merely private revelation. As Catholics, we don't have to believe it. What would be the best way for me to respond to those people?
Well, I look at it this way. I respond, it's true. You do not have to believe in private revelation for salvation. It's not a necessity, okay? In the truest sense. Now, a reality is this: a mind that does not accept private revelation. Think of the things that we're required to acknowledge as Catholics. We have to believe that the Savior of the world was born to a virgin. Okay, we have to believe that the body and blood of Christ is truly present in what looks to be bread and wine. These are things we're required to believe if we're Catholic. You know, we believe that he died, rose from the dead, ascended into heaven. Well, these are all pretty supernatural things, aren't they? The miracles that he performed. Now, maybe not all the miracles, but all these things, we have to accept those to be truly Catholic, okay? To be, or we're not in the church. So if somebody has a mind that cannot believe that same entity, God, could send someone back as our emissary, to warn us of certain things, to direct us in certain things, well, there's something, in my opinion, that's not quite there in the mindset. So, no, you don't have to, I guess, by the letter of the law, it's not necessary to believe in private revelation. But I think where would our church be without it? Okay, so it would have all ended at the ascension, or would all, those are the things, those are the obligations we have to believe in. Well, if we don't believe that more is possible, then we truly don't believe in the supernatural power of God and of salvation.
And it almost seems like then we're limiting God, almost saying that he can't do that, which would obviously be would be erroneous.
It is erroneous. And I think, our Protestant brethren kind of fall in that line of thinking, okay, where it's all over now. God, we're saved and all you have to do is accept Jesus as your Savior. And it's an easy road after that. Well, it's dangerous. Okay. Well, that's not the case. I can be saved. I can go to confession now, have all my sins forgiven, and in sin tomorrow. Well, I'm no longer saved. I'm no longer in sanctifying grace at that point. And that's, and that's the biggest thing too, right there, is accepting the power of the priesthood that was given, So when you go back to the idea about believing in private revelation, no, I think that is something that a mind that does not believe in private revelation, I think, is on the wrong road.
Yeah. And it seems like there's some private revelations, if I'm straying a little from the beaten path, but it seems like there's some private revelations that might be something that's more revealed to the heart of a saint. Like maybe if we're speaking about maybe Saint Gertrude or Saint Faustina, but there's also now when there has happened in history where there's been a public component to the private revelation,
right?
And that would seem to be, are there different categories like that? I'm not sure. It just seems like that.
Will there be categories? That I don't know. But sometimes, the miracle of the sun at Fatima is a perfect example of something that was manifested to everybody so that people would believe. All right. Well, if you were at the miracle of the sun and you don't believe, there were agnostics, there were atheists, there were skeptics all over that went and walked out with a whole different thing. Maybe some were there, and it's true, that did walk out and they still didn't believe because their hearts were so cold that their minds were closed completely. But that was a public manifestation given to endorse a private revelation. Now, and in the case of Fatima and Lourdes and many others, the church acknowledges it. Well, if the church acknowledges it, then, you pretty much, the church does not easily endorse certain things. People say, what about Medjugorje? It's been going on for 40 years. Well, what we got to say right there is, and I don't give any, whether it's true or not, I'm not the person going to decide that. But something has to be over before the church can make a determination about it, So, Fatima and other revelations. They're simple usually in their time frame. Well, this is 6 months. I mean, and with Fatima, look at how everything came to be. Look at the things that they talked about. They're going to be they spoke about the errors of Russia. This was months before the Bolshevik Revolution. And the kids didn't even know Russia. They thought Russia was a person. They had no idea. They didn't even know what they were hearing when she told them that. Russia will spread her errors if my requests are not heeded. Okay, Russia will spread her errors. Well, Russia's errors hadn't even seeded until after that. So and that's the whole point. People if you look at the history of the 20th century, or this last 100 years into this century, I mean, how can you not believe in Fatima? Because everything just kept unfolding and continues to unfold. And that is probably that's kind of that's the hardness of the hearts of some people, really, not to see that. Have we, I think we have held back certain things. I think the many prayers and the consecrations made by so many people in our apostolate, as well as in others, really prayed for the fulfillment of the message of Fatima, made the reparation Our Lady wanted. Maybe that's why worse things didn't happen. Maybe why when she said nations would be annihilated, well, maybe they weren't annihilated. Maybe, for that very reason, enough people prayed. Although there's another take on that. Some people say, well, and I'm one of them, look at contraception and abortion. I think we're annihilating ourselves. I mean, did it have to be a nuclear conflagration? We thought of that, that's what it seemed like, but maybe that wasn't what it was. Or maybe the annihilation of nations is these nations that were under communism and didn't have the faith. And how many people were maybe annihilated, lost their souls because of no access to the sacraments? So that's another way to look at annihilation. I don't know. Or maybe it is exactly that, a nuclear war, which is still a possibility. Let's be realistic. I mean, we're in a very dangerous world,
Right. No,
but who knows? I mean, but all that stuff, though, it's prayer that can keep it from happening. And that's really what we have to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So next question. Is the message of Our Lady of Fatima still relevant today? You kind of started going in that direction already.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Yes, it is for that very reason. In the 1990s, I believe it was St. Pope John Paul II, it said Fatima is more relevant today than it was in 1917. Now, I say it's more relevant even today than it was when he said that. Okay, because look at, things seem to be coming to fruition, if you will. You can see what's happening out there in the world. Although maybe we're coming to the end of the bad times. It's another thing too. You have to look at it that way, But I think it is more relevant today because the Fatima message is a message of warning and a message of hope. And I think people have to. We work for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and that is, that'll come when we merit it. I know that's those you mentioned, but that's a fact. When we merit it, that's when it will happen. Not a moment before. When God says, "Okay, now there's sufficient grace; it's been earned, and we'll let it happen."
All right, we'll feed right into that question then. So talk about that, and then we'll speak about what can Catholics, ordinary Catholics in the pews, what could they practically do? So the connection between fulfilling Our Lady of Fatima's requests, and the connection between that and the faithful meriting the grace for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Well, she put it all in our hands at Fatima. She put it all in our hands to work for her triumph, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. What is the triumph of the Immaculate Heart? Okay, it is the time. I mean, my feeling is this: St. Paul said, "We're going to win." We know that. Okay, that goes from the beginning. We know we're going to win. Ultimately, the church is going to win. Now, are we going to be in the church? Or are we going to abandon the church? Are we going to be St. Peter, who fell and came back? Are we going to be Judas, who despaired and left? There's a lot of that going on right now. You know that, you see it, and it's sad. But I believe that the triumph, you could see it maybe building. Here we are. There have been more people martyred for the faith, for example, in the past 100 years, in the past century, basically, than in the previous 19 centuries of Christianity combined. Wow, think about that. Well, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the faith, Gene, really. Okay, so by my thinking, we are on the threshold of an explosion of grace. that's going to change things. I think my feeling is all of this junk that's happening in the church and in society, and believe me, they're one. Okay, society and the church work together. I mean, unfortunately, that's how it works. So the issues that are in the church, and there are many, we know that, but they're a reflection of a society that's not loyal to God. Okay, so if there are bad priests out there, if there are bad bishops, and I'm not saying, I'm saying, individually, well, maybe it's because they come from a bad gene pool here. Okay, we're not developing the right people. If they're bad politicians, they're coming from our society. We have to start, and again, it's the family. You're a family man, that. I mean, Cardinal Cafara's famous letter to Sister Lucia, that the last battle between God and Satan is going to be to the family, in the family. Well, of course, if you want to tear down a building, you ever see a building demolished when they do a controlled demolition? What do? They put the charges in the foundation, and then the building just falls down. Well, the family is the foundation of society. And so we're paying the price for the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and I mean, it's unfortunate, and times before that, actually. But this is what what do we have to do, I guess, is where you're going with this. What do we have to do? Well, we have to be faithful to the faith, to our church, to the things we were taught. And the Fatima message asks for nothing more than that, other than to make additional reparation for sin, because it's so abundant in the world. Yeah.
Right. So you would agree that it would be accurate to say that the faithful merit that grace for the triumph.
Without question. Yeah. I mean, maybe we should have been there years ago. I don't know. I mean, I believe we should have. And I'm not saying because other people didn't do it. Well, nor did I. Okay. I mean, we as a people have failed, but just because you failed doesn't mean you can't lift yourself up and now do it again. Okay. This is not, we're not, it's like it's the whole thing of salvation. We have confession. We have the sacrament of confession. I mean, my God, what a gift that is. We have the Eucharist. This strengthens us. Okay. This is how we do it. We all fall. I mean, when Christ fell on the way to Calvary, symbolically, obviously, but it was the same thing. We fall and we get up. We fall, we get up. And I mean, to get to, it's so many people do not avail themselves of the sacrament of penance. And here at the Blue Army Shrine, we have every day, 7 days a week, other than won't have on Easter and that, and Father will hear confessions sometimes from 11 o'clock. And Father Greg's been there before, and he stayed in the afternoon and stayed an hour or two afterwards. We so appreciate it, but that's what it is. I mean, it's truly, that's where your strength comes, your forgiveness. You lose grace, you get it back, and it doesn't always have to be a mortal sin. I mean, any lack of falling short of what God wants, and we have to make good on it. The grace of the sacrament is what brings us back. Yeah.
Right. I think a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah wouldn't have been destroyed if there was just 10 faithful people in the city. So it almost seems like there's always in salvific history, there's a small remnant, a very relatively small remnant that basically pull the weight for the rest of the world. So and we don't know what that number is, but it seems like if we could get 1, 2 other people, you never know what the number is to satisfy the Lord, but 1 or 2 extra people, it could be someone watching that puts it over the top. We don't know.
Exactly. No, and that's exactly it. That's why we have to evangelize. The whole part of the Fatima message is about, charity, and charity, bringing people. You want to save souls. That's why you're doing this. But, first you learn, we always say you got to learn, live, and then spread the message of Fatima. Well, obviously you got to learn it in order maybe to live it. And you cannot give what you do not have, okay? But then you have to bring people into the faith to understand, it's not just a matter of picking up a rosary and praying. Our founder, John Hafford, when he met with Sister Lucia in 1947, asked her, said, I assume what Our Lady wants the most is the recitation of the rosary. And she smiled and she said to him, no, Our Lady wants people to become holy. So you think about that, yes, the rosary and other devotional things are a means to that end. But that's what she said. We have to become holy. And when we are, then we project that to others. And then people see, A little quick story that my wife and I were very active and were members of the Society of Jean Jugan with the Little Sisters of the Poor. And they always talk of a story about they would accept anybody in their homes. And one man came in, he was dying, he was in the infirmary and very angry, wasn't a Catholic. And I guess the sister brought in and left a tray of food for him. He flung it against the wall. He was so angry, and she just, without saying a word, she got on the floor, she cleaned everything up, went back, and then came back later with another tray of food. Supposedly a couple of days later, and it's a true story, he asked the Mother Superior, he wanted to see her. And he said, could you have a priest come in and see me? I would like to maybe talk to him about becoming a Catholic. And she goes, certainly. And she kind of spoke with him about it. And he explained that the reason he felt that way, he saw how she responded to him that day and said, I want what she has. Boy, isn't that something, I mean, just that me, I've probably taken that. I could just imagine, we're men, we're a little different, I guess, how we respond. But I mean, look how that charity of that woman perhaps saved a soul. All right. Well, that's what we're about. We're charity. I mean, we are to live lives of charity, just like the children were asked to do when she showed them the vision of hell. Are you willing to offer your lives in prayer and reparation so that people will avoid this fate? They're there because there's no one to pray and make reparation for them. Wow. So, what our job is. I mean, and as Catholics and as members of this apostolate, and that's why we have many, many resources, bluearmy.com, as is our website. We've got just many, many resources towards people. And the biggest thing, I think, obviously the first Saturday's devotion, which I know you wanted to touch on, but I think that, that's everything. That to me is a fulfillment of the Fatima message.
Yeah. Right. It's ultimately about, as our Lord said, to put the devotion to my mother's Immaculate Heart next to devotion to my Sacred Heart. So if it's not geared towards devotion to Our Lady, what are we doing? But right. And that being said, that Our Lady gave us certain practical things we can do that should spark that fervor, that devotion. So if you wanted to touch on some of those requests that she gave us, because a lot of people think the Fatima message was just pray the rosary. And I don't mean that in a, flippant way. That's very important. Pray the rosary every day. But she also told us about the first 5 Saturdays, and there were several other points, if you care to elaborate.
Yeah, well, that's the whole point. I mean, so the promise is the grace of salvation. Well, obviously that's beautiful, and that's what we want. But you fulfill it to make reparation. The Fatima message is about reparation, repairing the sins of men. Just like, if you read the Bible accounts, what they say that Adam lived to be 900 some years old. I don't know what those actual ages were, but I've read that. Well, because he had to make reparation for the sin they committed. Sins, thus sin is the big one, the original sin, of course. And I think that see, we don't understand the gravity of sin. We can't, because our fallen nature doesn't allow that. The holiest people on earth still can't totally understand it. Our Lady comes as an emissary, someone who was the third person who came into this world without original sin. Think about that, okay? But she maintained her holiness throughout, something Adam and Eve didn't do. And so, with the exception of her son, no one ever went through her entire life without falling. And that is just beyond comprehension when you really ponder it. Well, she knows the horror of sin more than anybody. She knows the beauty of sanctity. I mean, she adores God at the highest place in heaven. We'll never be there, but we strive for it. And I think that's what Fatima is all about. What we've been asked to do, to become like her. So the Immaculate Heart, the devotion of the main part of the Fatima devotion, it's a whole new spirituality based on devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, to become like her. Okay, how many times St. Luke and the others spoke about Mary's heart, and she pondered this in her heart, and she, we have to get into that heart and become, think like that heart does, and it's total charity for people. And we're here to make reparation for sin. So you do it for yourself, you do it for your loved ones. You pray the first Saturday's devotion, the beautiful promises. You do 5 for yourself. How about doing it for your one of your children, for your spouse, for your brothers, for your sisters, your siblings? your friends. Okay, now comes the hard part. Will you do it for someone that you don't like? Because that's true charity. If I'm praying, if I turn on the news, and God knows it's the most aggravating thing to do nowadays, and if I see people there that I just can't stand, I can be angry about them, or do I say a prayer for them? Okay. And that's why I give Archbishop Corleone a lot of credit in San Francisco when everybody's going after Nancy Pelosi and this and that. He started a prayer campaign for her. You know, that's he lives in that district, you know. So I mean, I think that's what we have to do. We, you know, I mean, if we can change hearts, we can change the world. The Rosary has changed the world already in so many times and places that I think, you know, prayer and our intentions, and as you mentioned, penance, because we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, think about Nineveh when the people of Nineveh put on their sacrifice, okay, and the king called for called for penance, and he put on the sackcloth and ashes, the king of the country, and they were spared. They were spared destruction. So, you know, could have happened in Sodom and Gomorrah too, like you said, a few more people. Yeah.
Right. So we have the Rosary, we have the first 5 Saturdays. Obviously, this is all done in a spirit of devotion and reparation. The theme is devotion and reparation, of course, but the Rosary, the first 5 Saturday devotion,
and the brown scapular. Devotion to the brown scapular. Yeah, that's very important.
And would you say that would also include the personal consecration, because the brown scapular is a sign of your personal consecration?
It is a sign of your consecration, and you make that consecration, you know, and once you, and then I say, you know, about receiving it, because on the first Saturdays we have the enrollment in the brown scapular, as well as on the 13th with the big events. And you know, people say, well, I didn't get my scapular blessed. You don't have to. Once you're enrolled, every time you put a scapular on, it is blessed. You have blessed, you've gotten yourself blessed is what you did. And you bring that, you know, you put that scapular on, and it you know, it doesn't have to be blessed. You know, that can be, of course, but it's not, you know, it shows you that you have consecrated yourself. You know, what is a consecration? A consecration is setting aside something, or, you know, something, or you know, an individual, an item, a building, individuals, a country, a world, just like Pope Francis did. And, you know, you're consecrating, you're putting that aside for a blessed reason. That's what a consecration is all about. And that's why I think this consecration that occurred a few weeks ago will have great merit. And I will say, because I believe with the Holy Father, having all these bishops involved, so many priests, so many laity, members of laity, I just think, you know, I think you're going to see great fruit from it. But the fruit is the grace that's given to us. The grace is a door that's open for us. Now we have to walk through it. And if we don't follow up properly, if we don't live lives of, you know, of reparation and prayer and working with that, then the grace of a consecration will go nowhere. Yeah, maybe that's why after 1984, we still to this day have so much evil in the world. Many great things happen. I mean, no one can deny what happened after the 84 consecration, the fall of the Soviet Union, and so many things. I mean, my wife is from Poland. Believe me, you know, we know they lived there. She came here prior to that in the 70s when she was young. But you know, I speak with my in-laws about what that was like, and no one imagined, no one ever thought that the Soviet Union would fall without firing a shot. Pretty amazing. But look what's happening today. There's a resurgence of that evil is still coming back, you know. And so, you know, nothing's forever. I mean, you know, it's only as long as we merit it, you know. Sin caused the world to be in the condition it was when the Fatima messages were given. And so we can't just say, okay, this is done. 1991, mission accomplished. You know, that's it. We're done. No, it's not what it was. You know, I mean, and I think that happened with a lot of people, even in this apostolate. I think that's why our apostolate tended to go down after the 90s. I think there was just this sense of, okay, we got it done. Now let's move on to something else. Well, yeah, not really. You know, you got more of a resurgence after, but
it would seem that there would be no reason to ever stop fulfilling Our Lady's requests, even after the triumph of the Immaculate Heart. In fact, at that period of time, it's probably even more binding on the faithful to be fulfilling Our Lady's requests. And since reparation is something that's basically done until the final judgment, until with the resurrections of the body, there would be no reason to stop ever fulfilling Our Lady's request. So Fatima becomes important now until the end, because
Oh, it
devotion.
does. I mean, exactly. And I mean, it because, until the last person on earth breathes their last breath, the devil's going to do everything he can to give souls to hell, because that's his mission, if you will, his own mission, not God's mission, of course. And so, hopefully, the evil will be chained, in times to come. I mean, I say, what will the Immaculate Heart of Mary look like? Well, the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary look like? Well, I don't think it's going to be a time of material prosperity necessarily. I think it's going to be a time of maybe difficulty in a material sense, but a time of holiness. Maybe some of these distractions in this world, which and don't get me wrong, it's great to have the technology. We're using it today, right here. That's great. But let's think of the cesspool that's out there on the internet too. Okay, what that has done, and we have to flood it with good things. That's what I say, and these are exactly what these are about. But I think that we have to get back into quiet contemplation. I think that's really what it comes down to. We have to communicate with God in the only way we can, and that is by shutting up and letting him tell us what he wants. We always know what we want to do. I'm a planner. That's my life, my job. I have to, and it's necessary. Don't get me wrong, you are too. But it comes to a point where you have to, instead of deciding what you're going to do and praying for God to support it, maybe you should pray to him to direct you as to what you should be doing more, and then following up after that, with that inspiration that he will most definitely give you, because that's how it is. Prayer moves mountains, right? Because why? Because prayer moves God, and so we can be I don't know, we can be intelligent, we can be educated, and many of us are, but I don't know, some of the most intelligent people I know have some stupid attitudes. I got to be very honest with you. I mean, it's sad but it's pride. You see, humility and pride is the root of all sin and separation from God, and humility is the foundation of all reconciliation. So, Our Lady didn't appear to a Jesuit or to the Pope or to a cardinal or bishop. She appeared to 3 shepherd simple children who weren't educated, couldn't read, couldn't write, but they had in their hearts, they accepted what was given to them. And we have to humbly accept their position, what they're saying, if we're going to succeed in this. So yeah.
And them, as faithful Catholics, they fulfilled Our Lady of Fatima's request to the best of their ability, as far as offering up the sacrifices, praying for the Pope, and so on and so forth. It seems like there's many people praying the Rosary. Obviously, it's never enough people praying the Rosary,
right? Yeah.
But it seems like several of those other devotions that Our Lady said to do, as far as the brown scapular, the personal consecration, it seems like they're lagging behind a little bit in terms of that. I always wonder what do you think would happen if that were to catch up to speed, if the people started wearing the brown scapular, offering up their sufferings, praying the sacrifice prayer in proportion to the number of people that are praying the Rosary. What do you think would happen? I know we don't know for sure.
We don't know, but I'm with you. I think there'd be an explosion of it isn't how many people in their hearts. Just ponder this. What if everybody on earth, for one moment, all turned to goodwill in their hearts, said a prayer to God in their hearts as they know how to pray? I think that the entire world would change instantaneously. Now, what's the chance of that happening? Well, a lot of evil out there, but I'm saying that's all God wants. I mean, because in heaven, that's how it works. I mean, you're in tune with Him, and I just think that the more people pray, the more we do it. There is no, I mean, the people don't understand the power of prayer. We're promoting nocturnal adoration, Eucharistic adoration throughout our 70, because that was a big part of our founding. It still is. But we republished the book, The Night of Love, which was a book written by our founder, John Hafford, and it was about the all-night vigils, okay, of which some of them have been going. There's one in New York that's been going since 1968. In Chicago, I know of several that were going. Now they may have lost a little bit during COVID because the churches weren't open, but they've been doing it right. And in that book he poses a number of questions, but one particularly: can you save 1,000 souls in one night of prayer and adoration? Well, think about it. Can you? I don't know. I mean, but if you go there with that intention, it's darn likely. Okay, now you will never know that on earth. If you make it to heaven, you find out. But what about maybe 1,000 people or more or less come in and say, thank you for what you did for me tonight. On that night, you converted me. I went back to the faith. You see, we don't know. We don't know what things are going to be. And God doesn't give us that crystal ball. He doesn't allow us to see the future. We have to, that's faith. Faith is important, but faith, hope, and charity, obviously the theological virtues, you have faith here, but you won't have faith in the next life because it'll all be in front of you. Hope, you won't have hope in the next life because you either gained or lost everything you ever hoped for at that point. But charity is the one that lives out through eternity. And that's why we have to live in charity as he asked us to. Are you willing to offer your life in prayer and reparation for the conversion of sinners? And they said yes. And if we're going to be devotees of the Fatima message, we have to say the same thing. We have to say yes. And that charity that we bring will be there with us, and they'll be with us at that terrible moment of judgment too, when we all have to face it. They'll be there with us because if you've helped them, they're going to help you. There's no ingratitude in heaven, so that's it's our job.
Makes sense. And each person, just, you don't know the value of what you're doing and how that impacts other people. I always think of the quote, you could count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed.
Very good. I like that. Yeah, that's a very good way to look at it. Yes, I like that.
So with cooperating with God's grace, we bear, he bears that fruit through us 30-fold, 60-fold, 100-fold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that you already leading into my last question again, with all the confusion in the world and in the church, and knowing just how important and how relevant is Our Lady of Fatima is for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart and for the salvation of souls. What do you think all Catholics can agree on, to the left, the right? What can we all agree on in terms of a mere Fatima message that everyone can get behind?
Yeah, I think it is, live your faith. That's the key. Okay. Live according to the 10 commandments and love of neighbor. I mean, if you have true charity in your heart, what did Moses say to the Israelites? The last thing he said to them before they crossed into the promised land: love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your whole soul, and with all your might. He didn't enter into there with them. Obviously, he stayed back across the river. But then Christ took that same thing and he added to it. And he said, and love your neighbor as yourself for the love of God. That's what we have to do. Okay. If we love people, not by, enabling them in sin, not by ignoring, actually admonishing the sinner, I think is the hardest thing to do. Nobody wants an uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinner with the family, right? We all have those situations, but you have to be willing to stand up for the faith and get people. And if everybody will just understand that, it's all charity and love of God first, and then love of your neighbor, because you love God only as much as you love the person that you love the least. Okay. And that really is a fact. And that's a saying that's a couple other people said about it. It's beautiful. I've always loved that. The people you love the least, if you love them as much as you love them, that's how much you love God. So
that's a great reality check for all of us,
isn't it? Yeah, it's not easy sometimes.
and I love what you said. Even if we had everyone speaking one voice, even for a short period of time, it could make such a difference.
Oh, yeah, amazing difference. Yeah, just amazing. So we pray for that.
Thank you very much, David, for your time. And I do believe that is the answer for our time. And it's what Our Lady wants. It's what our Lord wants.
Yeah.
So we need to all do our part. We don't know who we're going to touch, how we're going to have an impact at the end, but we all want that triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and we want to be together with her and her son forever in heaven.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the goal. We've got to get there. Yeah.
Thank you again, David. I really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Bye.
Bye.